Hello and welcome to Webshow number 7 of the Meet the Pros web show by the PSA. My name is Claire Boyles and I'm delighted to be co-hosting today's show with Mr. Alan Stevens.
Well, hello, number 7. There we are. Look, number 7, web show number 7. We got there, and we're motoring now. And have we got a show for you? We have got the current PSA president, Mike Ogilvie, who's going to be talking about how to niche your business. But first, Mike, if you'd like to perhaps just say a few words about the new year.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Claire. Yeah, it's Happy New Year to everybody. It's 2015, hopefully, with the recession that we're emerging from and the confidence the country is supposed in, despite the election coming up, we're going to be have great fun. And as we're meant to be messengers, I suppose that our words we should be thinking about very carefully in the because we could be influencing people and their decisions. I've just been to a meeting where we've told we're going to be interviewing local politicians, and I thought to ourselves about our situation in the PSA. You know, as messengers, as leaders, as I don't like the word thought leaders, but I understand what it means. But we do have an enviable position in terms of being able to influence people, because as we're going to be talking about niches, I know that as soon as you stand up on that podium, you assume some sort of level of expertise that people take you a lot more seriously than your friends would do in any other scenario. So interesting times ahead. But within the PSA, the whole idea is that we're going to concentrate as much as possible on the regions. I hope to visit every single region, and if for any reason the diaries just don't meet, we will make sure that Graham Jones, Derek Arden, or any of the other members of the board like Alan Stevens will be trying to make sure that somebody from the board has actually visited that region. But hopefully there'll be more than one of us will be visiting every region. But the issue is with the regions, we're hoping that we can try and find the skill sets within the PSA as a whole. As I mentioned at the conference when I took over, it was interesting that the survey done by Graham Jones, which said that we're losing members every 2 years. So we've got a hard core of members, but a lot of members join us and then they leave after 2 years. And when we're looking at that and talking to people, it seems it's because people just haven't implemented. They've come along, they've loved listening to ideas, and after a while they just fall off because they have difficulty implementing. So that's our challenge, because we can't do it from the centre. So all we've got to try and do is help people in the regions, because a lot of people don't come to the main conferences, they come to the regional meetings. So what's our challenge? What can we do better? So first thing we're going to hope to do, and Graham Jones is compiling a new website just for our members at the moment, is to go back to the old system where we could identify each other's skill sets. And so if somebody's got a particular expertise in neurosurgeon motivation, then if there's other people there, what we can do is try and put each other together and almost like the Americans with their pegs, see how we can encourage, see how we can support, see how we can help them to be more effective with their careers. So that's the idea, nothing too complex, but obviously it's great talking about it, it's another thing doing it.
Excellent, Mike. So you talked about PEGs there, and that's professional expertise groups, of course, where people who are working in the same sector, in the same topic, get together and exchange information. So that's the sort of thing that might happen here, you think?
Well, until we actually get the raw data, we don't know. I mean, for example, we know there's an awful lot of business speakers, and there's a lot of marketing speakers, and there's a lot of HR, employee motivation, leadership type speakers. And what we ought to do is look to see, well, if we can enable people maybe to have their own, not necessarily masterminds, but meetings by actually sharing the information and trying to make it easier so that people are more aware. I think that would be great. We'll be doing more of a service to our members that way, and maybe encouraging them to share ideas, maybe mastermind each other, mentor each other, and maybe share the platform, recommend each other to future gigs. So I think that's the ideal, in theory, we would like to achieve.
Excellent, Mike. And just before we go any further, could I just thank you on behalf of the membership, on behalf of the board and the Exco, for your service, for your year of service. It is a year of service as president. I've done it myself. Several of us have done it, and you really put yourself out. You're giving up your time and we're extremely grateful that you're doing that, and grateful you're joining us today. So one of the things we wanted to talk about, the main thing we want to talk about, is niching, which you know a great deal about. So let me just kick off with a very general question. What would you define as a niche?
Okay, well, I suppose from a point of view of a speaker, but I don't think we should just necessarily narrow it, because what I talk about is exactly what I talk about as a business consultant or a coach, is let's identify what we're good at. Because, you know, I talked recently at the London PSA, and I say a lot of people are casting their line out. It's a bit like the metaphor when the shipping boat goes out. In the old days, they used to go out, and if they saw some seagulls, they would go to those seagulls because there might be fish around there. Nowadays, the modern ships will go and they'll look at the radar, they'll look at satellite, they'll actually be a bit more pinpoint accuracy where they're more likely to find fish. And I find so many speakers have got topics that are great, they're very enthusiastic about it, but I do question whether there's an audience for them. And so what they need to do is see what they can do which they're enthusiastic and motivated about, but how can they implement it in an area where there's an audience that will want to pay for it. After all, that's why we are professional speakers. So taking that as a niche is how do we find an area of expertise that is of interest that people are going to pay us. So in my particular case, I do a lot in the healthcare sector, so care homes, doctors, dentists, but also in the professional sector in terms of solicitors, and looking, you know, within there, the niche tends to be is how do you stand out from the crowd? So I will niche within the niche. So although I'm called the profit man, I can talk about profit. So I've got loads of things I can talk about. The most I tend to get booked for is are there any areas that I can help? Because so many people are great technically at being dentists, being doctors, at being at care homes, or being a solicitor, but there's so few actually stand out as they're the people we want to work with. And it's the same applies to speakers. We've got some great speakers, but some are an awful lot better at differentiating themselves and standing out. And you know, a chap called Peter Thompson, who's a member of ours, but he's also a highly respected business guru, for want of a better word, came out with the thing about you don't get paid for who you are. You get paid for what you've done, and you have to earn the rights. You have to earn the stripes to be able to say I'm an expert in this. You've got to be able to have testimonials so that other people know that you've worked in their industry. Why should they ever want to trust somebody who's not done this sort of work before, not worked in their particular industry? Otherwise it's just theory, and that's the danger of not having a niche, because you become a generalist and less valuable.
Well, the interesting point that you raised there, Mike, and a question that's come in from several people who do a sort of, you're talking about this before the event. Why would you want to have a niche when you might be able to get some general business? For example, you could be a leadership expert, but somebody might say to you, well, you might do a presentation skills course for my people for a couple of thousand, or you might do some teamwork. Now, why wouldn't somebody do that? If they're offered the work and it's not in their niche, isn't it okay to just do that?
Absolutely, perfectly okay, because as long as you're competent and confident, then as long as you are able to do a professional job with integrity, then there's no reason why you shouldn't. But from a business perspective, where are you going to concentrate in trying to find the work? It's going to be much easier if you can actually establish credibility within certain sectors. Otherwise, where is the one that's going to earn you the most money? You're going to be, at the end of the year, you're going to be saying, oh, well, I did better in that area rather than this area. So probably better to be proactive and then concentrate on saying, well, I'm actually better in that area. I know it's valuable. People tell me it's valuable, and I've got great testimonials from people who've seen it, because people believe what other people say about you rather than what you say about yourself. So that's an area I'm more likely to be able to generate business and make myself more successful. And make a difference, of course, because after all, why do we do what we do? You know, part of it is it's a business, but part of it is because we have a burning desire to actually share our message and make a difference to people.
Absolutely. I mean, you talked about niching very, very eloquently there, Mike. But Can a niche be too small? I mean, for example, if you specialised in large care homes in Sussex, that'd be quite a small niche, and that might not be enough to sustain a business. So how do you decide the size of the niche that you want to go into?
I think you never segregate yourself by geographical area. I think because who knows where you're going to get called to go wherever it is in the world. And when we went over to Canada last December, one of the things I tried to do was to build connections with care homes over there. Unfortunately, we didn't actually get the meeting, but if there's sectors throughout the world, you can get the expertise, and even though there might be different regulatory regimes around the world, the principles are the same in terms of what you're trying to do, and especially if it's marketing or a leadership or whatever, it's just how do you apply the leadership in that particular area of skill set, as it were.
So what you've talked about effectively is what I would call a horizontal niche, or a niche where you're looking at a particular expertise. What about something which you only, for example, well, actually it's more a vertical niche. Jim and Naomi Rhodey, who we both know well, who work in America, only work with dentists, for example, and they're very, very successful. That niche is incredibly well successful. So you could niche vertically, or you could niche horizontally, where you would do the same thing to a whole load of sectors.
Yeah.
Is there any preference that you would have? Do you think it's better to go for a particular market, a particular type of business, or is it better to do a particular topic across a whole range of businesses?
No, I think if you, say for example, if you were talking about customer care, you can do that as long as you've got the stories that are going to resonate, that are going to get the reaction. You can do it across a range of businesses. What you have to do is make sure you tailor your stories and tailor the advice to the industry sector that you are speaking at, unless you are speaking to a customer care conference, for example. But I prefer, and my experience in work in terms of looking at businesses as well as my own speaking career is I've found that I've got better results by going more vertical, but I'm never eliminating the opportunity to spread my message across the board. So I've done an awful lot with the care home world. And only recently, I remember Nigel Risner once talking a few years back, and he said he did a free showcase, a talk that he didn't charge for, and he then thought about it, and as a result of that talk, he ended up getting £100,000 worth of business. And so when you hear about people never do anything for free, that was his point. You have to choose where you're going to do, where you're going to charge and where you're not going to charge. And I thought about that, and I thought just with one particular client, let alone that industry. I did a conference about 15 years ago for an organisation called Henry Stewart, and I think I was paid princely sum of £300 or something. It wasn't a lot, but probably just one client as a result of that has generated me well over 100,000 in the last 10 years. As a result of that conference, and I've had a whole load more clients as a result of that, because that client has recommended me to other clients, and vice versa, so on, so on.
So it sounds like what you're saying. Sorry, Claire, go on.
Very quickly, because Nigel has a great phrase that describes that, and I love it. And it's fit, fee, or flee. So you've got your choice. If it's a good fit, great. If they're paying you, great. Otherwise, you can flee, run away.
Absolutely, absolutely. But sometimes we get frightened, and when I go back to the Peter Thompson thing, you have to earn your stripes. And if you're new or you want to try things, you just go in there and don't be worried about giving for free, because you'll get feedback, you'll get testimonials if you're good, but you'll learn from it, but you'll also get great contacts. So it really is important that you do that. But you then begin to learn about their industry. I mean, only recently I did a conference. I've suddenly got a call out of the blue. Can you, I was at the conference that you were talking at, can you come and talk up in Newcastle? We've got a Christmas dinner. I want you to entertain my team before they start really drinking. And I said, great, no problem. He wasn't even worried about the fee. He just said, are you available? And I then checked, actually it's my last day of coming back from skiing. So I was able to refer it up to Jeff Ram, who unfortunately isn't available. So I've left it to the Michael Arnott to see if he's got anybody who knows anything about care homes. But whoever it is, it's got to be entertaining. And I just made the point there that if there's somebody who fits the bill but doesn't know about care homes, I can give them some background information to help them fit. So, and that's the joy of our association, is sometimes you don't need the detail. I mean, I've got a lot of detail because I've been immersed in it for so long, and I actually see businesses in operation regularly. But we can now help each other, and we don't necessarily have to have all the detailed skills that I have. So that's the benefit of going vertical, because you do get asked regularly, and they talk to other people, and then you get invited to talk conferences. Of course, then you get invited to do articles, and that's another way of creating your niche expertise, is writing articles, which then starts the ball rolling again. If you write an article, you're an expert, as long as they agree with it, or even if they disagree with it, and you then get engaged, you then get invited to talk, which is great.
So you've talked about niching there, Mike. I mean, and a lot of people will be listening to this and watching the recording of this and thinking, I'm not sure I have a niche. So if somebody is coming to it with that mindset, they don't really know what their niche is, how would they set about finding their niche?
Well, I would start, like you say, with a horizontal niche. So look what you're passionate about and say, for example, your horizontal niche, Alan, would be social media. And so you would be looking at that and saying, well, that could apply in so many different ways, in so many different areas. So you've got a wide niche there, but you could have social media for lawyers as if you suddenly find that you have a couple of successful talks in the legal profession, and I know for sure that the legal profession desperately need to know how to use social media more effectively. But one of these things you can't tell them that. They have to learn that for themselves, and so it's almost like by luck. But you can, by being proactive, you can help you create your luck by saying, well, I'm actually good. I've got a really relevant message, and not only have I got a relevant message, I've got a takeaway that will help you implement some of the things I talk about. So having a wider niche like social media, you can then turn it into a vertical niche, into social media for lawyers, for example, and it's just something that develops. It just doesn't click, and there you've got it immediately.
And you've talked about niches in various ways. What speakers do you admire who really have a very, very tightly defined niche and are really doing well out of it?
Crumbs. I haven't really. I mean, I think the one I enjoy watching, I never stop enjoying watching him, is Jeff Ram, but he has his marketing niche, so he's got very much a horizontal niche, and he gathers stories from around the world, and so people will send him pictures, will send him stories, and so he's always getting new material, but he's also an entertainer. So he's not only an educator, he's an entertainer, and so from that niche, he doesn't try and do anything else. So when I worked with Jeff in Iran, we spoke for a bank, and as a result of that, we were asked to go and do a consultancy. And Jeff said, whoa, he said, I can talk on marketing, but all the other bits and pieces in terms of doing the due diligence, identifying the need, coming up with suggestions, I just don't want to get involved in it. It's not congruent with what I offer. So he said, you just call me in when you've identified the areas where there is a need, and if it fits with what I can offer, that's fine. And I think that's a very genuine way of working. But he's got a very specific niche in marketing, and now with his celebrity service, customer service, his new talk, that is another one. But there's lots of people talking on customer service, but there's so many stories out there, and it's all about the way you share it. I mean, I talk very much on customer service, but again, I will do that and try and find customer service within niches if I can.
So you've got a very well-defined niche. So is Jeff. So have I. So is Claire. Which is all fine. But there are some speakers that where I have to admit, I don't really know what their niche is. I'm not entirely sure. Perhaps they haven't created that niche as yet.
Yes.
So I think we probably need to help them. The other speakers in the PSA, we need to help them create their niche, because I think, like you, I'd love to refer people, but sometimes I'm not entirely sure how to refer people.
Yes.
So I think if you could come back to what you were talking about earlier, that creation of that website where we all know what people do, could you just say a little bit more about that and how that might help us refer people on?
Okay, I mean, I think that's an important point because I've been mentoring. I won't mention a name for want of embarrassing them, but they've came to me. They've actually been very successful, highly praised as a speaker, but they came and said that I haven't really got a topic, and so what they've spoken on is something they're passionate about, but it's not something they're going to get paid for. They can get paid for a bit. They can go and take some of the message into schools, for example, and that's a very good community to get into. But the topic itself is probably very limited. So with somebody who has so much talent, what I'm saying is, well, we've got to do is start with, right, what else are you passionate about? And then it came to, well, I'm passionate about communication. Well, wow. The number one fault, when I go to any business, if there's any issues, when I delve down into what it is, when it comes down to it, number one thing is communication. So if she's passionate about communication, well, the world's her oyster. It's just a question of saying, right, what are we actually going to do? Let's actually find a speech that is going to be relevant and develop it. It's not going to be something that we can come up with a full McCoy straight away. But then equally, if she's got anybody else in the PSA, or she's part of Toastmasters as well, who also talks on communication. For example, Philip Carmpany. There is an example where she'd be able to talk and using the old NLP ideas, model herself on what works with other successful people. And I think that's where so many speakers who are starting are just casting their line, as I said earlier, and hoping somebody will bite. Whereas they would actually help themselves more by saying, what is the benefit of what I'm saying, and who's going to benefit most from this? Then if we can get other speakers to think the same way and share that as part of an interest group, then whether or not we'll be successful, at least we will have tried.
So if you've got a very clearly defined niche and you understand what lots of the other niches are, and somebody comes to you to offer you something which is outside your niche, would it be appropriate for you to pass that on to somebody else, or should you try and do it yourself even though it's not quite your thing?
No, I'd always pass it on to somebody else, because however tempting it is to do it yourself, it's going to be very unprofessional if somebody takes you on as a professional speaker and you don't do a professional job. So it's far better for you to pass it on to somebody else who will appreciate the referral, and in turn, under Cialdini's principles of reciprocity, almost certainly, maybe not immediately, but almost certainly down the line, you will get a referral back. And that's the way the world works.
I'm going to jump in on that as well, because I think what's important is I've done that as well. It's like, I could do this particular speech on such and such, but what happens is when you start doing a speech on a different topic, and if that goes well, then people think that's what you do. And then they start getting confused because, hold on, but weren't you about startup marketing and online marketing, and now you're doing this? So then people don't know, and as Alan said, it's about referrals as well. People don't know what you stand for. So at the start, it's good to maybe try out a different topic in a different audience to find out what's working. But once you have one, if you then go off and do other ones, then it just confuses the market because nobody knows what you actually do.
Quite right. Quite right. Yeah, no, it's I'm often asked to speak about leadership, and I say I can do it. I've got lots of material on leadership, and I say when I talk about profit, when it comes down to pricing, it comes down to communication, and that's such a wide area in terms of whether it's marketing, whether it's customer service, but pricing is one of the main things. But leadership is really important. Now I can do that, but I prefer to just include it as a part of how to be successful in a business. But when somebody wants me to talk specifically on leadership, I'll try and see if I can find somebody else who will do it better for me. But if I can't find anybody, or they insist they want me, I'll do it. But I always just say that is not my niche topic, although I do cover it in how to be more successful in your business.
And do you think, Mike, you can have more than one niche? Is it possible? I know I've talked to a number of speakers, and I'm sure you have too, I'm sure Claire has, where people say, well, I'm very good at this, but I'm also very good at that. And they like to kind of ride two horses. Do you think it's possible to have more than one niche successfully?
Yes, I do. I think it's definitely possible, but I think you'll tend to gravitate to because you know in our game we're building up stories, and so you build up your war chest, and if you spread yourself so wide, you're not going to get involved with the people, and so you're going to come across as very shallow. So the danger is I think you can have two niches that may be similar. If they're totally distinct, you're leaving yourself quite a tough task. But if you've got the team there to do it. I mean, I think Frank Finesse is a very good example. He had a niche which was very much on marketing, on business development, leadership, and now his niche is very much social media and use of IT with a marketing bent on it. But so I'm sure he still will be able to do his business development and his leadership talks, and what was it, Running with the Lions or whatever it was, his old
that's right.
whether or not he still does that speech.
Yeah.
But you know, you've got the information, you don't lose it. And I was only talking to somebody the other day, somebody was reminding me about Patricia Fripp, and she said, oh well, this story I haven't used for ages, but it's still relevant. And I think that's the point. You know, when we always are refreshing our stories, but some of the stories in our war chest are still relevant because not everybody will have heard it. So you just have to pick what is right for your audience. And so I do think you can have more than one niche. You just got to be very careful to make sure you do them justice.
But how would you do that on a website, Mike? I mean, if somebody does two things that are very distinct, very different, how would that be two separate websites, or would it be a split website, or how would they represent themselves to the outside world?
Yeah, I think you would just probably have at least a separate page on your website for the different niche. So I mean, I always feel a bit of a cheat with being the profit man because there's so many areas that you can cover. I mean, I hate talking about accounts, but you know, I suppose in the end I've accepted a couple of jobs where I've been asked to talk about accounts for the non-financial manager, and it's because I'm an accountant by training. People assume that that's what I'm talking about all the time, but I very rarely talk about it, and certainly it would never feature on a website or any blogs or anything like that. But actually, I did it twice last year, and got paid very nice, and the customer was very satisfied. So it's one of those areas that you can have if you want have separate pages or indeed a separate website.
And it's a debate that's come up quite a lot in the PSA Facebook group, as I'm sure you know, where people are talking about whether they have a speaker website and a business website, or whether they combine the two. And there are mixed views, and there's probably no right answer. Just wonder what's your take on it? If you have a business name and a speaker name, is that separate, or is it all part of the same thing?
I think they're all part of the same thing. I do have several websites, and because I've got several businesses, but the speaker site, they will refer to the speaker site, and the speaker site will refer to them. But the main business website is the profit team, and the profit team then links to other sites. So, but you know, as a profit man, I basically, the message is I will help businesses to be more effective by getting them to sell more, to be more effective and make more profits. And how I do that, well, it just depends on their particular issues. But what I always just say is the one thing unusual is I give a guarantee that if I'm not successful, they don't have to pay me. So where I use other people in my business, I have a separate website. So the speaker site is for me, but the business site is where I use other people, because I'll bring in marketing experts, I'll bring in specialists in leadership or whatever, depending on what the requirement is. Because as speakers now, we all know more and more of our work is not just appearing on a webinar, appearing on the podium, talking at conferences. It's what can you do after that? Because you get somebody enthused, then you suddenly say, well, can you actually come along and talk to our team? And we're seeing that more and more. And so people without the backup resources and material as speakers will struggle.
You're making a very interesting point there. And Alan Weiss, who, as we know, is no fool himself, has just written a great 4-page article in the NSA Speaker magazine, the latest issue, talking about the fact that the speaking world is changing and we should no longer refer to ourselves as speakers.
Yeah.
we are experts. And if you remember, you and I have been back around long enough to know that we used to be called experts who speak.
That's right.
Their old PSA strapline. Do you think there's a tendency to go back towards that? Do you think perhaps we shouldn't niche ourselves as speakers, but more as experts?
Oh, I think very much so. I think that's and that's the whole thing of niche, isn't it? We have a specialism in a certain area. We just happen to be speakers, so we hopefully great communicators, and we can motivate and enthuse. So we have that additional benefit, because there are some consultants who are not very good at communicating and enthusing, and we've all been in those conferences where people are just can't wait, and the speakers are almost reading off their notes from the podium, whereas we would hopefully try and engage more with the client. But in the end, when they want to get the value, they want to know what can we do with them afterwards. I did a fantastic exercise recently. I was working at Canterbury Cathedral as a speaking venue, and it was a firm of lawyers, but the speech and the workshop were just one part of it. In the end, in order to be able to do it, I had to do a whole load of mystery shopping, for example. So, which is something I've never had to do in preparation for a speech before. But that was part of the way of being able
quite an unusual thing for preparation. Go out and mystery shop. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, did you have to try out several religions before you actually turned up? I'm not
but I was paid to do it as well, which is great. So and you then what you're doing is you're adding value. So even before you actually get out on the podium, but the traditional model is you enthuse them, and they say, "Oh, can you come and enthuse our team?" And that's the more traditional model. But with that, then you need to have systems and processes. It's no good just being able to talk to the team.
Well, Mike, we've had a comment from a viewer,
Right.
Josepha Fawcett. Hi, Josepha, who's watching us right now live. She says, thank you for asking the question. I have 4 niche areas: training, knowledge management, learning, quality improvement, and yes, I have to be careful to make sure they're represented in an interlinking way, and that's how I've worked my website. It's taken ages, but I need to remain focused or people get confused, as Claire mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
So it's an interesting to have 4 niches. I think is quite but well done, Josepha. Well done.
Yeah, it's brave, and but as Josepha said, they're interlinked, but she's distinguishing them and saying they're 4 specific skill sets, so that to try and avoid the confusion. But then she's just creating a tough job on herself to be able to do all 4 to the depth that she would want to, and I'm sure she's more than capable of it.
I'm sure she is. I'm sure she is. So having decided on your niche and having worked in your niche for a while, how do you keep your niche under review? Because a niche could start to decay, could atrophy, could be no longer popular. How do you make sure that your niche is still relevant to the market?
Well, again, I think that's a very, very important point. So if we look at our market and say, well, we might have a great speech and a great topic and a great subject, but are there people who want to pay for it? And it's a bit like schools. A lot of people dismiss people who speak for schools, but there's a big market and schools do pay. You probably have to do more speeches for the schools than you would maybe do in industry, but it's still, as long as they pay, that's an important part. But a lot of people who speak for schools will do it for free because it's part of them making a difference. So there's 2 different types of speeches. But I find when I'm looking at my care homes, I look at now, are care homes going to go down? When I heard the new leader of the NHS, I can't remember his name, and he made some comment at a conference that he hopes one day there will never be a need for another care home. And I thought, well, he's totally off the wall there, because there's no way.
Where are we going to go, Mike?
Exactly. No way will it ever happen. But what I do see in the care home world, for example, is they're already appearing your high-class homes and your ma and pa homes, and what the ma and pa homes are tending, with some exceptions, are tending to have to take the state-funded patients, and unless you go for a volume home, it's very hard to be successful on the state-funded, and people are being accused of ripping people off by asking them to pay top-ups, and you have to sort of get to understand which areas are accepting, or the social services are allowing people to pay top-ups. you think these are sort of specific areas. They're not particularly technical, but unless you know about it, you're not going to be able to deal with it. I mean, I got banned from speaking in Somerset to the care world because I was followed on to the podium by a social services person, and I had laid into social services, not realising that they were the main sponsors of the conference.
Oh.
And so I got rebooked, and then a month later I had an embarrassing call. They said, "We're really embarrassed, but we're going to have to ask you to decline our booking because social services won't sponsor us." And it's because I knew what was going on in Somerset, because I'd actually done some research beforehand, I was able to say, I think it's outrageous the way you people are, and I could see the audience were all with me, and all totally agreed. It's just that social services didn't like it. And I think if you don't have your niche, you just aren't going to get the depth of knowledge that you need to actually earn the credibility with your audience.
No, making a very interesting point there, Mike. You're talking about depth of knowledge and credibility with your audience, and that comes with experience.
Yes.
It comes with time. For those people who are watching this and thinking, well, I'm fairly new into the speaking profession, which is not true of you and I and Claire, obviously, but there are a number of people in the PSA who are new to the profession and are just starting out. They may not be new as experts, but they're new to the profession. How do they build that body of knowledge? How do they generate that credibility, and how do they start getting paid business in their niche if they don't have that behind them already?
I think they have to dive in, and I feel that any speaker starting now who depends purely on speaking as their income is going to find things very tough. They have to dive in and immerse themselves into that area to show and demonstrate to the people that they can make a difference. They can offer something that these potential clients are not getting from existing providers. So it's training is one area of it, but it's motivation, like we're talking about. It's leadership, showing people how to be more successful in their business, and how they can benefit from taking these people who are new in the game, who haven't actually written a book or haven't written loads of articles. You have to start by being there actually at the coalface and demonstrating your ability, and then you will get asked back, and you then start building up your expertise. So just like you say, experience, but you've got some people. Simon Bucknall's a great, there he is, a great speaker, but he's actually made it his goal to find out a lot about what he's talking about. So even though he was inexperienced, he was actually booked very quickly by a lot of people.
And I think David Heine is another great example, and he does a massive amount of research.
Yes.
So what he's done is to make himself an expert by simply asking people a bunch of questions.
Yes.
About their motivation and how they do various things. And I think so that's another way that people can generate expertise within a niche, is to start doing their own original research.
Absolutely. David Heine reminds me of another guy. I don't know if you ever met him, a chap called Andy Gilbert,
Yes.
who wrote about making a difference, and he did exactly the same thing. He said he wanted to interview successful people, but his definition of success doesn't necessarily mean had a Rolls Royce outside. It was somebody who was highly respected in the community, and so what he wanted to do was say, well, look, this is what people have said to me that matters, and if this matters to them, then it's going to matter to other people. And that's what David Heine has done. He's done very similar. Andy then wrote several books as a result of it, and same with David Heine with his using his ideas, is being able to show examples of people at schools, athletes, paraplegics, whatever they are, who have actually made a success of life despite whatever barriers they have got in their way.
I've got a question that's come in. I'm not going to read out who it's from, and that'll be for obvious reasons in just a moment. And the question is, what are the successful niches in speaking at the moment that I might exploit?
Well, judging by the number of people who talk about customer care, judging by the number of people who talk about marketing, I would say that has to be. There's always a need for better marketing, better customer care, and also better management. There's always a need for that. But so if rather than the more obscure ones, if you're new into it and you've got the skill sets, then you've just got to be able to demonstrate that you've got those skill sets. And we've got lots of people like that in our membership, after all.
I thought you might say that it's not about the hot topic. Sorry, Claire, you were going to say something.
No, you go finish your thought first.
No, I was going to say I thought Mike might say it's not about the hot topics, it's about what you're good at. But hey.
Well, I think what I was going to say is you both touched on it already. Is you might choose a niche that you love and you know a lot about, but you have to know whether anybody wants to pay for it. And you know, marketing, customer service, those are all things that businesses can see a bottom line result for. So therefore, it's easy. I can justify, okay, well, I can invest money in that because I'm likely to get money back. And there is an awful lot of feeling culturally in our society about, oh, do what you're passionate about and the money will come. And I don't think that's necessarily the reality when you're doing business.
No, I agree. But you know, when I was thinking of Alan's question, I was thinking about, for example, the person who I've agreed to mentor, and saying her skill is communication and her passion is communication. So from that, then let's actually look at what area we can develop her skills so that she can use her passion, ally it to the skills that she can develop and she can learn, and then she can then develop, because she's still young, she can then take it forward to have a very successful career ahead. So but I agree with what Alan was saying. The word passion, actually, funny enough, came from Andy Gilbert, because he was the first person when I saw on a business card, you know, and he talked about a passion statement, where other people were talking about mission statements. And I think passion is I know it's an overused word, but you can tell the people who are passionate about a subject rather than somebody who's feigning to be passionate about a subject.
All right, well, let me kind of challenge you on that, Mike, if I may. Is it possible to earn money in the speaking business from something that you're not passionate about? I mean, you may have expertise and a lot of talent and a lot of ability to deliver on a topic that you're not particularly passionate about. Your passion might be way outside and have no value in terms of earning. Is it okay to go and earn money from a topic that you're not passionate about?
Very much so. I mean, I've given you an example already that I've done 2 speeches and workshops on how to understand finances if you're not a financial person. So the manager of a department, the manager of a business, how do they understand finances? You know, I'm far from passionate about it. It's what I would refer to something as of the day job in the past, as it were. But it's something that I know I've got the knowledge, I've got the skills, and I can deliver it. And you know, I said to them, if you can't find somebody who will do it, I will happily do it. Well, I didn't say happily. I will do it for you. But it's not something that I would normally be looking to try and do for people.
I mean, it's a very interesting take. I tend to agree with you, Mike. I must say, I think there are things that you can do that you're not necessarily passionate about, or primarily passionate about, that can actually generate speaking income and consulting income. But yet there's a strong feeling within all speaking associations around the world that you should focus on your passion first and then look at how valuable that is. So do you think that may not be the best advice?
Yeah, I think the passion, you don't focus on your passion first. You focus on, is it an area that's going to earn money first? And then, if you're passionate about it, great, develop it. But as I say, I know a lot of passionate speakers out there who are fantastic, but they haven't got a topic that people are prepared to pay for. And I'm trying to say to them, that's great, that's really interesting, but I'm not sure who's going to pay to listen to that. And so it doesn't matter about being passionate. So I think you've got to be really objective first and say, if this is your profession rather than a hobby, then actually concentrate on what is going to earn you money, and get yourself to be passionate about it.
Excellent. Claire, any thoughts on that?
Sorry, slight delay. I mute myself while you guys are speaking so that I don't.
I'm sorry, Claire. You got to unmute yourself. I do apologise.
No, I totally agree. I specialise in startups, but my own personal journey. I worked as a HR manager. I worked in recruitment and HR in big corporates, and I wanted to set up my own business. And then when I first did, I discovered that it was much harder than I expected to actually earn any money. Yeah. And I absorbed as much as I could about marketing, and it's evolved now that actually my passion and what I earn a living from is about helping other people find that that middle ground. It's like, we've got to do something that you enjoy, because if you really hated it, it would be really hard to discipline yourself to do it daily. But as you said, Mike, get the money right first, because otherwise you can't do anything. If you don't have an income coming in, I mean, the stress levels, I've seen it over and over again with people, not just speakers, but they are passionate and they're burning, and they're like, oh, I want to do this, I want to bring this to the world, but nobody wants to pay them for it, and then they're broke, and then they end up feeling awful and feeling like a failure, and oh well, what am I supposed to do now? It's like, well, find something to earn money from, and
Yeah.
different being a hobby. The Hedgehog Principle by Jim Collins is one of my favorites, and for those that don't know, you can Google it, but it uses a simple Venn diagram. First circle, passion, what you love. Next one is expertise. Are you really good at it? And the third one is, can you earn money from it?
Yeah.
And it's only when that overlaps in that sweet spot that you really have a business that you can earn an income and love doing at the same time. And it's very, very, very important to have that right balance, because
Yeah, I think you're right. And touching on the startups, well, let's face it, 90%, over 90% of our businesses in the UK employ less than 10 people. And I think it's slightly less actually employ one or less people. So it's incredibly, there's so many small businesses out there, and it's such a lonely business. There's so many businesses that are relying on the internet. So there's a total new skill set out there, and people don't know where to start. So all speakers have to make sure they've got an ability to be able to coach as well. I think it's really important, because when I first joined the PSA, it was very, very much for speakers, for keynote speakers, and now it's very much the other way. It's you get a few people who will earn just on keynote speaking, but most speakers have to earn their stripes by being able to coach, by being able to mentor, by being able to support. Now, as a non-exec director, there's nothing more fulfilling for me to either formally or informally be a non-exec director for a business, and so many of those have arisen from me speaking, where people have asked me, can you help?
Right, I think that's a significant change in the speaking industry as well, and you touched on it earlier, is we need to provide more value, because speaking as an income stream, a sole income stream, is becoming less likely, and that's partly because there's an increase in people that do want to speak and are prepared to speak as a marketing tool rather than an income source, because when they can get in front of the right audience, they can create a revenue. It's like you were saying, one of your clients, Mike, they only paid you $300 for the speech, but as a result of that, the business that you got out of it was worth considerably more. So I think it's an interesting thing in the speaking industry that's happening, is while we're professional speakers, we take our speaking very seriously, and we do the preparation and we put the work in and make sure that we are as good speakers as we possibly can to communicate the value and the message to our audience. The getting paid part of it has altered about how we get paid for it.
Yes, I agree. I think it tends to be an overall package. And I think one of our previous presidents, Reg Athwal, who went out to Dubai, he was a great speaker. He is a great speaker, but he realised that one of the best ways he was going to make money was by systemising a process. And so he instead of actually giving a speech where he would earn so much money from, he was then able to create workshops where he would turn a book into a manual, and where the book might sell for £10, he was being able to charge £100 for a manual, and then he was able to charge a workshop fee. So that was probably 10 years ago when Reg first went out to Dubai, and he's become a very successful international business advisor as a result of that. He used to be just a speaker.
I'm going to turn the discussion a little bit, Mike, if you don't mind. I think we've got about 10 minutes. Yes, about 10 minutes left. The time has flown by. But I just want to get your take as our current president on a couple of things, if I may. And one of the issues that's come up recently in the Facebook group is about paying to speak. And there are increasingly a number of event organisers who are saying to speakers, look, you're welcome to come and speak, but you need to pay me for the opportunity to get on stage, and obviously that means you've got to actually promote products and sell services. What's your take on that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, I hate the idea, but I think it's here, and we're going to see it more and more because it's effectively what I call the exhibition speech, because they've got people who are going to, you've got exhibition stands all round, and they look at the speakers as just another person selling their wares. So unless, as a speaker, you've got wares to sell, and you're not going to sell many books, you know, unless you're really lucky, you've got to be able to be confident that you're going to sell your services in terms of helping somebody in the audience for you to be able to do that. I get asked to do it a lot of times, and I refuse. But I'm not saying I won't do, because there's one thing doing something for free, where I will get a free exhibition stand, for example. So that will be a chance for me to interact with the audience, or bring a colleague along to help me interact with the audience. But to actually pay for the privilege, I'm sure in due course I'll probably eat my words and say, yeah, that was worth it. But it does stick in the gullet a bit. But I think it is here, and it is we're going to see more of it.
I tend to agree. I think it is an inevitable trend, but I think it does also change the nature of the speech.
It does.
Because rather than delivering pure information, you've got to have some kind of imperative. You've got to have some kind of pitch within that, because otherwise you're not going to recoup the money that you've spent to get on stage.
And selling skills and techniques from the platform as well, which is a very different area. And it also produces a very different experience for the audiences that we're in front of. And while we're seeing a shift to more and more of that at the moment, I can see it swinging back again as event organisers and audiences say, actually, we don't really like being sold to from stage. We'd rather, you know, get some real value and substance during that stage time, and you know, the revenue can happen from other places as well. So I think we'll continue seeing an increase for a little bit, but then we'll also see it swinging back the other way as people want more quality from stage.
Yeah, I agree with you, Claire, and I think it's something that will happen, because some people will be desperate to get business and to try to get the business. But I'm like you, I hate to be sold, and you can see through it, and it's like so much social media you get now. You think, oh, there's some information, and then you suddenly realize, because they're not getting to the point, there's going to be the sell bit at the end. Whereas I love to be able to read stuff where I don't have to press a button to actually get the rest of the information. And it's the same with the speech. You can, when you see people who are clearly selling to you, I've come here to not to be sold to. I've come to be educated or to be entertained, but not to be sold to. And I'll put up with some selling, but I don't put up with a lot of it. And I'll be onto my phone. I won't be concentrating, and then I'll stop coming to those conferences.
Let's take it on one step from niching. I say we've only got a few minutes left, so we're going to got time for a couple more questions, Mike. If you want to be in a niche, that's fine, but what we really want, I think, is to be unique. We want to be absolutely front of mind for an event organizer. So how would you become unique within your chosen niche?
It's a difficult one, because especially unless your chosen niche is very narrow and there are very few people, you have to, again, earn the stripes, and you have to earn the credibility. So uniqueness is very hard to achieve. Your uniqueness is your ability to tell stories that are interesting, that are different to the stories that somebody else is selling. So it's the ability to research the area, the city, the country you're going into, to make something that's relevant, rather than it's you churning out the same old speech, so that you have an ability to engage. So you're unique in that way, but there are other people just as good. It's just a question of, are you going to be able to give the value that people are prepared to recommend you to other people? I think that's it. But to actually be unique in the pure sense of the word, it's very difficult.
We've got about 5 minutes left, Mike, so it's only fair if I give the opportunity as president of the association to just set out, if you will, or if you wish, your hopes for the remainder of your year of service, which goes up to October this year. What would you hope the PSA to be? How would you hope the PSA to evolve during the rest of your year?
Well, it's bearing in mind what I said at the beginning, I realise that there are a lot of speakers who are struggling, but I also realise there's a lot of speakers who are enjoying being part of the PSA. I use the word tribe, and I got told off for using the word tribe, but when I saw Terry Brock using the word in the NSA magazine, I thought, well, if he can use it, then I'm perfectly happy to use it, because that's the way I look at it. I've been coming along like you, Alan, for so many years, and I want to actually see more people feel the energy of the tribe, and we're only going to do that is if we get more involved. It's so many people get sucked into I don't know, the just being part of it, paying lip service and not really doing things. And that's why when I said if we can try and get the regions and try and help by identifying skill sets, we might just create more of a buzz going by helping people. And ideally, I'd love to see some people setting up their own conferences. So for example, we've got quite a few speakers in what I would call the health and well-being sector. And I would love, maybe with a bit of help from people more experienced, to help them set up their own conferences, because on their own they probably wouldn't know or wouldn't have the confidence to go about it. I mean, I would sometimes set up conferences where I share the risk with an organizer, but I would love to encourage people to do that. So it's a question of, can we create that vibe, can we create that buzz, that with the whole aim is to make us more professional, make us more effective and entertaining, but help each other. So where it's a bit like a glorious mastermind. I mean, the best experience I've ever had, and I know, Alan, you've experienced it, is when you work with other speakers in a country. So we were lucky. Alan and I didn't work together, but we went off to Iran, and we were the 9 of us, and where you feed off each other, you end up taking ideas, you end up looking at ideas, they end up filming you, you create something unique for that area, and the feeling that you're doing there, the feeling that you're adding value, and you then end up being asked back to speak, to do consultancy. I went out last year, I'm back again this year, and it's because you build up friendships and respect. And I think if we can, I can't repeat that exercise, so I'm trying to see if I can build up a conference that I can take around the country on business speaking. But what I've done, I've tested it in a small way in a couple of areas, and I want to almost use that as a case study where I can then say to people, look, this is what I've done, why don't you have a go? And I know Derry Llewellyn Davis, he has created several conferences and built up a client base of his, and involved other speakers. And I just think, as speakers, we should stop waiting to be contacted. We should be working together to see what we can do together to generate our own work. So and go and invite other people to our courses, rather than us having to hope to be the sole speaker at a particular business's course. So we can create our own open conferences, as it were. That's something that I would love to be able to achieve, to say that's something he started. The question is whether or not, we're all so busy. You can have the will in the world, it's just a question of can you actually get somebody to help implement it.
Mike, final question. We've just got a couple of minutes left, and a lot of people who are watching this, I think probably everyone who's watching this live is actually a member of PSA. They're part of our association. But this video goes up on YouTube. It'll be watched by people for years to come. So there are going to be people watching this who are not members of PSA, never been associated with it. I'm going to give you a minute now to talk to those people who are not current members, may have been members in the past, may not know what the PSA is all about. How would you persuade them to join the PSA?
Well, I think if you are any business person, even the people at the top of big businesses, it's a very lonely experience. And the power of being in a group together, where I've never been in such a sharing organisation as the PSA. And if you want to, the cost of being involved in PSA is trivial compared to the value you get back. The fun that you get at the regional meetings, as well as the annual conference and the April one-day conference, are just so fantastic. I mean, the energy that's created. The challenge to us is, what do we actually do with that? So if you're not a member, all I can ask you is why not? Because why are there so many people? Why is this association growing so quickly? And we've got people from around the world who are enjoying our Facebook group, even though they're not a member of our PSA, but they are finding that we are so actively engaged with each other on Facebook.
10,000 members on the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Over 10,000 members.
Absolutely. And when I was out in Africa recently, I was having conversations with people who knew me from the Facebook. And I'm not one of the regular contributors there, but they've known me there from the past. And you just think, well, this is it's the power of the group, a power of belonging. And I think those people who choose not to, well, that's fine. That's if you're a loner by nature, it's a loner by choice. It's but if you want to be able to learn and pick up from other people, join the PSA. It doesn't cost much, and you won't regret it.
Mike, that's fantastic. That's a great sales job there. Thank you very much for that, my friend. Well done. So our time is up. I think you've delivered an enormous amount of information, Mike. That's fantastic in the sort of short hour that we've had. Really, thank you, and thank you again. I say for your year of service. It's a huge thing that you're doing, and we really appreciate it. We're very grateful to you.
Well, it's great to be interviewed by the Andrew Marr of the PSA. And what shall I call you, Claire? But, it's been great fun. I
don't know in that context.
I've really enjoyed it. So it's just been like watching the breakfast on the BBC.
Thank you very much indeed, Mike. So that's it from me, Alan Stevens, the media coach. I'll hand you back to Claire to sign off.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you so much, Alan and Mike. You're brilliant as ever. And just for me to say, watch out for the next episode. We're going to be focusing a little bit more towards digital marketing. There's a lot of big changes in selling digital products within Europe and VAT and whatnot. If you haven't heard about that, have a Google. It may affect you. But we're going to be talking a bit more about digital products and websites and marketing online in the next episode. So keep an eye out on the PSA social media channels. We're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and we're on Google+. So speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.